Great. Okay. So we'll talk for a second to let Google hang. It's sort of like an old-timey Henry T. Ford. It needs to warm up for a
Okay.
minute.
Okay.
Um, Arden, how does this screen look to you?
Oh, good. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Maybe, is there any way you could maybe raise the computer up a little bit?
Do you have a laptop? You have a laptop, right?
I do.
Yeah. Can you raise it up a little bit? Like put a
Yeah.
book under it or something?
Yeah. Let me move some stuff around here.
Not anything as thick as a dictionary, but
How's that?
that's good. Yeah.
There you are.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works great.
So what are you doing in Washington?
I'm here for NCTE and Allen. NCTE, you probably know, is the National Council for Teachers of English, and
Right.
Allen is their it's associated with NCTE. It's their group on adolescent literature.
Oh, cool. And how's that going? You have to give a talk or something, or?
Yeah, I'm giving a speech tomorrow morning, and I'm doing I'm doing various book signings. One tonight in D.C. at Politics and Prose. A couple of
Oh,
signings tomorrow, and then a couple of other talks. I'm here through Tuesday.
oh, nice. Um, yeah, Politics and Prose is great.
Yeah.
They do great stuff. Um, okay, cool. So, sorry.
Okay, it's okay, I guess. I just don't want to talk about his head to get cut off ever.
We're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Please.
I'm talking to the both of you.
Okay.
Uh, so the book has been out for a while, but I sort of, to start off, I want to go back to before it was out. There was this kind of infamous article in the Wall Street Journal, which you are well acquainted with,
Oh yeah.
that basically was sort of questioning whether YA books needed to be so dark.
Hmm.
And she mentioned you in particular. What do you remember what you felt and thought when you first read that piece?
Yeah. I mean, well, first when the piece came out. Because the Wall Street, I guess, I don't know, people on the East Coast read it first, and then, so I was asleep, but my phone started going crazy, and so I knew something was up, but I didn't get out of bed to see until in the morning, and then there were all these messages on my Twitter feed and emails and on Facebook about this article, so I looked at the article, and it really bothered me a lot because. Not only because I think that the author was mistaken in a lot of the things, a lot of the points that were made in the article, but it bothered me a lot because I'm a father and I'm a teacher and I really really love kids, and when somebody has a national platform basically and make some kind of a case that I'm harmful to children, it really bothered me a lot. And then what bothered me even more was the firestorm of outrage that everybody jumped in and they were making some pretty outrageous claims about the author of the article and really really nasty stuff, calling the author vile names and so on, and I never responded publicly to the article, and so it hurt my feelings that people were being really cruel to the author, because I believe that you should be allowed to write whatever you want to write in this country, and I pretty much after that I pretty much had it, and I wanted to just quit, and I was going to quit writing actually, just because I take things really personally, and I took that situation very personally.
Yeah. And so, if you take things personally, do you read your book reviews or not?
I've just pretty much gotten to the point where I don't read them at all. I mean, it was a long time ago I stopped reading just the random review sites like Goodreads and Amazon reviews and Barnes and Noble. Not that they don't serve a purpose or anything, but I figure I had to stop reading things where just anybody could post and make some kind of a claim. Even people who quite obviously don't read books, sometimes they'll just get on there just to start some kind of a flame war. But yeah, so I actually, when my most recent book was reviewed in the New York Times just a couple of weeks ago, and my agent contacted me about that, I didn't even read the New York Times review, and so I said, "Well, is it any good?" I asked my agent if it was any good, and he said, "I think you should read it." So I did go ahead and read that. But yeah, I've pretty much stopped reading reviews.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about Grasshopper Jungle, a lot of times when we see dystopian stories, certainly in the movies, but like Independence Day and that one that was really bad about where the world froze over. Anyway, they take place in these big cities, and yours is in Iowa.
Right.
Tell me about the decision to make it a rural setting.
Well, all my in-laws come from Iowa, and so and they still talk to me. So I wanted to write about Iowa because there's something about Iowa, and there's something about that setting that's just essentially deeply American. And the other thing too is that because you mentioned the term dystopian in regards to Grasshopper Jungle, and again, this was entirely why I wrote the book, and I had no intention of showing it to anybody, but the book really was a reaction to that Wall Street Journal piece, because my big takeaway from the Wall Street Journal piece was that how can anyone claim that literature is harming children when that piece was published? We were in the midst of this devastating economic disaster, and people were losing their homes right and left. And I knew kids who had gone through the process of their family losing their homes and their parents losing their jobs or taking pay cuts and wondering whether or not there was enough food on the table. And then to top that off, a lot of those same families had children who were serving in the military, fighting over in the Middle East. And I thought, and I was thinking, what could possibly be darker than the United States of America in the summer of 2010? What could possibly be darker than that?
Yeah. And so are you a full-time teacher still, or do you write or full-time, or how does that work?
And I'm a full-time writer. I was in Europe this summer. I was touring in London and England and Scotland, and I phoned my wife from London, and I told her that I'm quitting. I can't go back to teaching. I'm there, and I don't need to. And she said, no, you're not going to quit. She made me stay because my daughter is in 12th grade at the school where I teach. So she made me agree to stay there for my daughter. She's the last one in public school. And then so we'll see what happens to me when June comes around.
Yeah. And so that's pretty hectic. Like, what's your writing schedule? Do you get up early? Do you stay up late?
Yeah, I get up very early. And I usually start writing at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And even when I'm on the road, and my day usually starts with a run. I took a really long run today. This hotel is actually in Maryland, and I ran across the bridge into Alexandria, Virginia, and then I write. I was sitting here writing right up until just when the clock showed me it was time to log on and do this.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And so what grade do you teach?
I teach high school. So I teach right now. I'm teaching mostly 10th grade, but next semester I'll be teaching all 12th grade.
And what kind of inspirations would you say that you get from students that end up in your work?
Oh, I mean, things that kids do and say, their stories give me so much um, information and inspiration for my novels. That's one of the that's going to be definitely the hardest thing to kind of put aside if I move away from education, is that interaction with young people, because they they're an endless source of fresh ideas. I think the book that I have coming out in March with Penguin called The Alex Crow it's basically about a refugee, and I've been teaching a class for non-English speaking students, and in the last few years I've gotten a number of students from Syria, and so the main character in The Alex Crow is really based on a boy that I met. He came to America when he was 15, and he was in my class probably just about 3 days after getting out of Syria during one of the worst parts of the civil war there, and he happened to show up in my class on a day when I was reading aloud to the students, and I was reading aloud from Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, this passage about how ridiculous the lyrics to our national anthem are. And I'm looking at this kid, fresh from Syria. This was his first day, his first moment ever in an American school. And while I'm reading Kurt Vonnegut, and I look at him, and I can tell he's just kind of in awe and shocked. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, welcome to America, kid. This is what it's like."
Right. And given the sort of tenuous nature of literary inspiration, if sometimes we have ideas, we're not, they don't actually work out for us. If an inspiration does work out for you, do you then feel an obligation to tell the student, "Hey, you inspired me with this," or because fiction is this alchemical thing where it's not just that character, but maybe qualities of another person's
Right.
character, do you not feel the need to
Right.
tell them?
I never put the pure person into what I write, but I did in the acknowledgments of The Alex Crow. I do acknowledge those students of mine, because they really do. They really are special survivors, I think. Those non-English speaking kids, they've got amazing stories, and they're definitely one of the top listings in the acknowledgments of that book.
Yeah. We interviewed you earlier this year when Grasshopper Jungle. The interesting things that you said was that even though the novel does involve the world ending, which hasn't been realistic so far, you said that the novel is absolutely realistic, but also absolutely ridiculous, just like life. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. What did you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, I think that Grasshopper Jungle is realistic in the manner that, I mean, I think that it's quite obvious that if human beings are going to be eradicated, it's going to be something the genesis of which comes from our own doing, and not. It's not going to be a big comet out of the sky, and it's not going to be a cataclysmic, super volcano. It's going to be something that we do to ourselves. And when that does happen, whether it's 10 years from now or 100 years from now, when it does happen, there'll be a lot of people going, I should have seen this coming, and we'll be saying, yeah, we kind of should have seen that coming, huh?
Giant.
I'm sorry, I think I might be losing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. So where did the idea for the giant praying mantises come from?
I've always really liked bugs. They're creepy, and I really like praying mantises. They don't, unlike some other kinds of bugs, they don't really creep me out that much. But you know, I live in a really rural area, and so I get a lot of praying mantises in the summertime. And I look at them, and I think there's something like a line in the book that says something like this. You know, if praying mantises were the size of grizzly bears, they would rule the world. You know, there'd be no stopping them, which is, you know, where the idea of the unstoppable soldier came from.
Yeah. Um, do you have any thoughts about why readers, and this is true of YA and you know, adult readers, why people are so into dystopian or apocalyptic fiction right now?
Well, I can only guess that it's a reaction to the building kind of climate of negativity that we have, in terms of our social interactions and our politics, the economic outlook of the world, the future of kids, I think, is so narrowed down, and then the global mess ups that we're involved in overseas that just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I think that there's an attraction to dystopian because maybe people are looking for something that's actually worse than here, and or maybe they're looking for some kind of an emotional distance where they can say, well, if you know, if I can get through this and not be affected by it, then maybe when I close this book, I can turn on the news and not be as deeply affected by the kinds of things that I'm seeing and hearing every day.
Yeah. Um, and so, for our viewers who are big fans of yours, tell us a little bit more about the Alex Crow book.
Okay, well, the Alex Crow, well, I'll go back and I'll say something about Grasshopper Jungle and how that relates. And Grasshopper Jungle starts off in a really, really small place, two kids skateboarding in an alley, and then it just goes out in all of these directions, this massive story arc that involves everything. And the Alex Crow, I did kind of the opposite thing to. I started with all of these seemingly vastly disjointed stories, and all of those things come together in a very small place at the very ending. And generally speaking, again, the story is about a boy who's a survivor of an attack in the war-torn Middle East. It's non-specific about exactly where he's from, and he manages to end up in a refugee camp that's a terrible place, and then he gets saved and he's brought to America. He's adopted by this family, and the father of the family is fascinated with bringing things back, species, and he works on that, and he's de-extincted a few different species, and including this crow named Alex. Then there's also a story about a ship that's also called the Alex Crow that was trying to discover a passage to the North Pole in the 1880s and became icebound. And this is based on a true story, the story of the USS Jeannette, and what happened to the survivors of that ship. And then there's this bomb guy who wants to blow things up, who's called the Melting Man, who's schizophrenic, and he thinks he's talking to Joseph Stalin, and he's got a couple of other people in his head kind of telling him about what he's doing and what they want him to do. And then there's this idea, this scientific idea of the possibility that males could become extinct and that the human species could evolve to become an entirely female species, and how that might work. And believe it or not, all these stories actually come together, because they all relate to each other, and they all tie into the story of Ariel, who's the boy who escapes and becomes this, you know, this resurrected, saved child here in the United States.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, on behalf of all gay men, we really hope that that last thing does not come true.
No, it's viable though, and they've actually. I mean, this is in the book. They can actually make sperm using female stem cells, and so then you could have a species of all double X human beings and have them regenerating. But yeah, I mean, could you imagine? That would be chilling. That would be really.
It would be especially for you and me.
Yep. It makes. I'm crossing my legs right now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for your time, Andrew, and good luck at the conference.
Thank you very much, Clay. It was nice meeting you.
Okay, nice to meet you too.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
You too.